In Plato's dialogues, Critias and Timaeus, he talks about a strange place called Atlantis. According to him, Atlantis was a powerful and advanced civilization located somewhere near the Pillars of Hercules, what we now know as the Strait of Gibraltar. It was ruled by a series of kings descended from the god Poseidon and was renowned for its wealth, military prowess, and sophisticated society. However, Atlantis became corrupt and imperialistic, leading the Athenians to defeat them in a cataclysmic war around 9,000 years before Plato's time. As punishment, the gods submerged Atlantis beneath the ocean in a single day and night. Given its legendary status, many moderns assume that Atlantis never existed. But has Atlantis been hiding in plain sight all along?
Yes.
And here's the answer.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Episode over.
Atlantis might even give us the mother of all mermaids. You don't like it. You love it. It's actually Brian's view.
don't love it.
I'm skeptical,
I
but
disagree.
it's Brian's official
Like
view.
on record, here's two things that I know for sure. Okay, you
Primary
ready?
water.
I need to know which camera I'm looking at here so I can make.
Go for the red.
The red one. Okay, listen. Two things are sure. We know where Atlantis was.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
No doubt.
And number two, Joel is wrong about the mother of the mermaids.
Okay, well, I'm not even saying it's my view, but I'll give it, but number three,
Are we just diving
primary
right in?
water is legit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
all
number
three
three,
of us, all three of us
primary
agree.
water.
Look,
primary water is not even a theory
We're
at
not
this
done.
point.
Gospel of Jesus Christ, 100%.
100%.
It's not even close.
The number of times you guys have used
Primary
this,
water?
it's making me uncomfortable.
Primary water also 100%. Not importance, but same
we've learned our
level
lesson.
of certainty.
Wait, you just went up to 100.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we
In
can
terms
add
of certainty.
Right on.
We can add another thing we know. We could revive the city of Atlantis with a primary water well.
Which there is one in the middle of the city
Right.
of Atlantis.
Well, and that's why it works in primary. So we're going to talk about primary water.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about mermaids some. We're going to talk about Nephilim because I think Plato's conception of
Yeah.
a king with 10 sons and
Indeed.
Yeah.
definitely works in.
Indeed.
So all this is important. But first, we should start
Let's
with
just tee it up.
location.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about why we're saying we know where Atlantis is.
Right.
Because like you said in the cold open, we have this it hangs by a thread, historically speaking, our knowledge of this place called Atlantis.
Right.
It's really one historical account preserved like Ben described. And for most people that listen, they go, that's the end of the story. They speculate about maybe a few offshore locations, sunken cities, things like that, assuming it's out in the ocean somewhere.
There's the
Or that
Atlantis of Japan,
The Yanaguni Monument.
Or it's just completely made up. But what happens is that if you go to a little place called the Sahara Desert,
Mauritania.
right in plain sight,
Mauritania.
but you wouldn't expect it.
and you start to lay out a certain set of facts around a certain location, you will not only, I'm convinced, anybody who looks into this, not only will you say, wow, that could be Atlantis, you will conclude that is Atlantis.
Right.
And then let me tell you, nail in the coffin for me, which I already was certain, but today it's just like
It was
extra,
the nail. It was another
certainty.
nail.
There actually is another historical account of Atlantis, which I did not know about until today.
From
And that is
Herodotus.
Herodotus.
The father of
of history.
A father of history.
Yeah.
Might want to hold on to that one.
Yes,
Yeah.
had compiled a map of the known world in his day, and down there, right where we
Believe Atlantis
would expect Atlantis to be, he had labeled a little circle and he had written Atlantis. Atlantis.
So let me lay out a few facts.
And real quick, wasn't there also a connection with like a ruler there being Atlas?
Yeah, let me lay out a few
Yes.
facts.
I'm going
here.
too fast. My bad.
And then you guys jump in. We'll fill it in. We'll get all of them by the end. So there's this place in the Sahara Desert, which first of all, you're like Sahara Desert. I thought we were talking about a sunken city.
we thought we were talking about the underwater city.
We're talking about a place in Atlantis. It's called the Eye of the Sahara.
Yep.
It's a known landmark in this region that doesn't get a lot of attention because it's so far from any habitable place and any kind of tourist sort of location. People don't travel to it. But if you look at it from above, it's about a 23 to 24 kilometer in diameter.
Which lines up perfectly, by the way, with what Plato says.
Series of, in the center, there's an island, or what would be if you had water at a certain level. And then there are rings of land around it, which perfectly matches the description,
And
physical description.
Each of these
the
rings
city
are
of
like
Atlantis.
mounds that would be above the
Yeah,
water.
earth
You might even
mounds.
call them, because it's rings are like serpent mounds.
Yeah.
Almost like a spiral.
It looks much like
Spirals are always positive.
and spirals are evil. We know this to be true.
And it's in a
I
location.
unironically believe
But the middle would be above the sea
Right.
level if there had been water, and each of these circles, concentric circles, would also be
would
above.
be at a same kind
and
of
there'd
elevation.
be water in between
and
each one.
the number of rings for land versus water also match up to what Plato
3
said.
to 2. So it's in a land that we call today Mauritania.
Yep.
Mauritania. And surrounding it, there are mountains called the Atlas Mountains. Now, Atlantis just means the city of Atlas.
Right.
That's what it means. And in legend, the original king of Atlantis was a man named Atlas.
Who was Atlas?
Atlas was a Nephilim.
He was a Nephilim.
Straight up.
Straight
up.
He
come
was
on.
the son
He
of
was a Nephilim.
Poseidon, who was a fallen watcher,
yeah.
who literally, according to the legend, Poseidon takes to wife a mortal woman named Cleito.
And has 10
The
sons.
mother of mermaids.
According to Joel, the mother of mermaids. According to Joel.
The mother of Nephilim, but also mermaids.
And mermaids. They had 10 sons.
So anyway,
The first mermaid.
Yeah.
Go
10
ahead.
sons who ruled the kingdoms.
Brian's position, not mine.
who ruled the realms. And what's fascinating about this, so this is supposedly a legendary account here, but Mauritania has a people that are now known as more the Berber people. I think they became even Islamic at some point in later history.
they used to be called the Muri people.
But before that, in the Mori people, and guess, Ben, just tell us, who was, according to their own history, the first king of the Moray people?
It was a fella named Atlas.
Oh my goodness.
They say that their first king was this legendary demigod figure named Atlas.
Named Atlas.
And the ruler of the capital city of the Atlantean Empire, which was Atlantis, was Atlas, the Nephilim child of Poseidon and Cleito.
Their words.
Okay, so real quick. So do we have any documentation that says Poseidon was the father of Atlas?
Yes.
Tell me.
Well, like Homer,
Okay.
Ovid in the,
Gotcha.
in the Metamorphoses.
And say the guy, father of
Herodotus.
Father of history.
Herodotus, father of history. And how much does he predate Plato?
He predates Plato. He was...
Because Plato's getting his
wasn't
conception
he-
from him,
Herodotus
right?
died when Plato was 2 years old.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Herodotus came around about 200 years after Plato's great-great-great-great-grandfather,
removed.
Solon,
Yeah.
who was the one who went to
To
Alexandria and learned about this legend of
Yeah,
of
learned about it
Atlantis.
from,
Okay.
which at that point
So
supposedly
Plato
was
is actually in the
9,000.
lineage of a guy who's before
Yeah.
the father of history. I'm not
Yeah.
even going to try to pronounce the
Herodotus.
but Herodotus. There we go.
Herodotus.
If you remind me each individual time I'm going to
Yeah,
say it,
we're-
then that would
we're
be
Just think
perfect.
of
Golden.
Herod and then Otis.
Herodotus. Beautiful.
You
Nailed
got
it.
You nailed it.
Right. But it's also because it's still fresh on my mind.
Yeah.
So give it 20 minutes and I'll be in trouble. But the point is, Herodotus is, we're not talking about hundreds of years predating Plato, but Plato was actually 2 years old. But in Plato's lineage, not the father of history, in Plato's lineage, you've got back before Herodotus is Solon, and he went to Alexandria, and that's where he discovered
Yes.
the legend of.
And this was
Which
2600
really
BC.
probably not legend. He
Or, I mean,
discovered the
600
history.
The history of Atlantis.
Of Atlantis.
Well, he
at that
received
time.
it from the Egyptian priest as history.
As
And
historical narrative.
and this was in around 600-ish BC,
Okay.
2,600 years ago. So further, now this is a desert region.
Right.
Obviously, but surrounding
Something happened.
the physical description Solon preserves has many, many very specific and particular physical characteristics. It's surrounded by a mountain range on a certain side that has rivers running down into it.
The northern Atlas Mountains have rivers that come down.
River basins that are now bone dry,
Right, it's all
but
dry
clearly carved out by
Right,
rivers.
yeah, they were there.
Out of the southern entrance now, then the water flows out. Clearly, this is exactly what we see when we look over this landscape. We see the landscape as well. Looks like it had been catastrophically deluged with extraordinary amounts of running water. I can't think of a
Almost as
single
if
event.
there
Is there an event in history?
It's hard to
where
say.
think of a single
lots of
one.
water quickly.
Let's see if we can get Ken Ham on the phone.
Also,
He can solve this for us.
the timeline would add up. So when Solon came around,
It's a global flood,
Solon, yeah,
Just
by the
not
way,
local.
is Noah's flood.
not local,
Gavin,
but global.
I'm sorry.
Portland
yeah.
hardest hit.
Hardest
So
hit.
Solon said that I believe it was 9,000 years before his time.
Yeah, which would have been about 11,000 something.
Right, which I doubt those I doubt those numbers as completely accurate because I think that the Bible is right about how holy the earth
Wow,
is.
it's 3,000
the
years
fact is,
before
it was a long time before Solon, who was a long time before Plato, who's a long time before us. And so it's very reasonable, and I genuinely mean this. It's going to sound like I'm joking. It's very reasonable to say that Atlantis was an antediluvian, a pre-flood city.
That's all that means, pre-flood.
Ruled by a Nephilim king that was highly advanced.
Yeah. And real quick, Nephilim, what we're saying there is Atlas would be the Nephilim king.
Atlas was the Nephilim.
And to be Nephilim, that means he had a human mother who married and procreated with a fallen angel father.
Yes.
That would be Poseidon.
Poseidon.
Some of these fallen angels, we believe that they were princes, spiritual princes, rulers, given dominion over principalities. The principalities are not a thing, but rather a place. Think of principalities in the same way you would think of provinces in Canada or regions or states. And some of these might not just be on land with nations and peoples, but oceans, water, certain topography and things like that. So what if one of the fallen angels, watchers that rebelled against God, they came down to earth and is a prince over a particular principality? His particular principality happens to be over water, in a land region on the coast. At the time, it was on the coast, had access to water. The city itself was water was a big part of it.
It was said to be a very important port city.
Very important port city. And so this is Poseidon. And that he actually does have power over wind and waves, not to the degree that Jesus, who is he, the disciples say, who can command the winds and waves and they obey him. But we know that Satan in the book of Job had authority to cause a great wind to make the house of Job's children collapse from a wind, nature, a wind, and kill them. So it's not that Jesus alone, that God alone has power over wind and waves. He has the supreme power over wind and waves. So the idea that one of these watchers, fallen angels, over a particular reason, a region, a port city dealing with water, and that fallen angel would be a water type power over waves and water, Poseidon, and that he marries a human woman and has a half fallen angel, half human child that becomes the king of the city, Atlas.
Who then has 10 sons.
No.
Right?
No. It was Poseidon and Cleito had 5 sets of twins.
And Atlas,
he's one of them.
Atlas was the first out of the womb.
He's one of them, that's right.
And he was set over Atlantis, the capital city.
Because it was the whole region.
Right. It was an empire.
Yes, that's
And then
right.
the other 10 sons ruled different regions of the Atlantean Empire.
And just to finish spelling it out, just
Guys, we know this for sure.
Brian wants his view to be communicated as well. So with all that, the fallen watcher, Poseidon, perhaps the same individual known by the Philistines, and I'm not saying it has to be the same, but it's possible, the same that's known as Poseidon in some mythology.
Greek mythology.
Greek mythology is this fallen angel, but then known to the Philistines as Dagon, the fish
to the Romans as Neptune.
Yep, as Neptune, exactly. So this is real. The biblical account actually, the biblical narrative accounts for this. And then, the wife, the human wife, Cleito. So now this is the last part that I personally am skeptical of, but Brian believes it 100%.
Again, exact opposite of what he just said.
I'm glad that everyone knows that I don't think this is legit.
But it's worth
they're
mentioning.
Confused now.
It's worth mentioning. Okay, so I don't believe it 100% either. I'm joking about Brian. He doesn't believe it. I think that it's within the realm of possibility, but I'm not even giving it 50%. But Enoch says, now Enoch is not canon, and it's not just because of Constantine and the Council of Nicaea cheated. I think there are actual reasons. I believe that we have the Bible. God didn't make a mistake. The same Holy Spirit who inspires the writing of the text preserved it. It. That this was supernatural. That there were wicked men who would love to corrupt it, but God didn't let them. So my trust is not in men. My trust is in God preserving his word to us for these 2,000 years. Praise God. So Enoch, although it's not infallible, inspired, canonical text, you still have Peter and Jude. You have biblical authors in their biblical text that is inspired, reference it as credible.
About this situation, about the Watchers and the Nephilim.
Exactly. Now, they don't reference it about the mermaid situation.
Right.
Too bad. Bummer. It bums me out.
If only.
If only. So this could be a portion of Enoch that is untrue, or at least at minimum, it should be viewed by us as a portion of Enoch that could be untrue.
I think Enoch preserved popular oral tradition
Right.
about many legendary aspects of the world that have been garbled through the generations in similar ways to many of the ancient mythologies. But Enoch did it because it was closer to some of the primary sources with greater purity than others, which is why I think the New Testament authors cite certain portions of it.
But not all.
But to be clear, none of us, we kid, but none of us are saying Enoch should be taken.
Yeah.
You know,
Word for word, yeah.
a lot of it we would look at and go, Enoch, what was he? He was on some ayahuasca.
Right. So all that being said, one thing that Enoch says about, because you always think, okay, so the fallen angels, what happened to them? Right? Okay, well, they tried to start a hybrid race, and that's where, the Nephilim come from and the giants. And then, those who engaged in this unholy union were locked in gloomy dungeons. We know what happened to the fallen angels.
Right.
What happened to their offspring, right? Their posterity. Well, first generation, that's the Nephilim. Think of like Hercules. I think Hercules was real. He's like a demigod, half god, lowercase g, fallen angel, and part man, and this kind of idea. And great men of renown with great
Inspired
strength and
Gilgamesh
great size and Gilgamesh. Totally. And then their grandsons from the Nephilim on down, subsequent generations would be giants.
And the
right? So the
Rephaim and
angelic
Anakim.
blood is now being diluted, but they're still of great size. The Rephaim and having different sizes, different clans, maybe even different skill sets and knowledge, or even supernatural abilities to heal. The Rephaim healer
Or at
as
least
well
knowledge,
as giant. At least knowledge, at least skill set. That's certainly plausible. But then the last thing that doesn't, it's what happened to the fallen angels? We got it. What happened to their children, Nephilim, their children's children, and so on, giants? We got it. But what about the women?
Well, Joel,
What about the women who married these fallen angels? What happened to them? Enoch has an answer.
Now is the time to leverage the MAGA economy. With Private Family Banking System, you can leverage savings in government-qualified plans, such as IRAs, Roths, 401ks, and 403bs. Remember, your 401k type savings are a future target for higher income taxes. Properly implementing private family banking methods will enormously impact your short-term cash use and success in building long-term multi-generational tax-free wealth. If you have consumer debt, no problem. They can help accelerate the payoff. If you have a small business, this gets even better. You can invest in the stock market or buy gold or Bitcoin while simultaneously making money on your savings. Does this sound too good to be true? Well, come and join a community of business owners, entrepreneurs, and investors who will show you how to multiply your money while enjoying added income tax protection and building legacy wealth. Join this parallel economy group today. Send an email today to banking@privatefamilybanking.com. Again, that's banking@privatefamilybanking.com, and one of our partners will contact you. Also, don't forget to click the link in the show notes below and download a copy of their free ebook, How to Build Multi-Generational Wealth Outside of Wall Street and Avoid the Coming Banking Meltdown.
America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God and not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reece Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reece Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.
But what happened to them, according to Enoch,
Right.
in this view that Joel claims, I believe, completely, and actually don't believe at all in any sense of the word, is that in engaging in this sexual relationship with the Watchers
Against nature.
they somehow gave up their soul to either be consumed or to be taken, so that they were cursed to wander as long-lived but soulless sirens.
And that's what Enoch
Mermaids.
says. He says the women, the wives of the fallen angels, who are the mothers of the Nephilim, grandmothers of the giants, and so on, they became, as they're cursed, sirens. And that the sirens were soulless, which is why they would want to draw men to themselves, men who are, who have souls. They're soulless. They have long lives, longer lifespan than human beings. But when they die, they're done.
That's it.
They're
so
done.
they're trying to get Odysseus. He's lashed to the mast.
They're trying to get his seed.
And they're trying to get Odysseus and certain parts of Odysseus to come over so that they can hope to get back
That's right.
the soul.
That's right.
A genesis of the succubus myth. And
So my point is that's just one more piece, and that one is less like everything. And we're joking, but everything that we said before the siren part, like location of
honestly,
Atlantis, 100%.
Get over yourself.
The location, I think, is pretty clear.
And the Poseidon being
Well, and not
a
only
fallen
that-
angel, and then Atlas being a Nephilim.
Look,
like 100.
Don't take our word for it. Pause the video and
look
go
it
just type in Ricat structure on Google Images.
Go look at, it's called the Ricat structure.
And you'll be like, oh, wow. It's about 52 miles east of the ocean, of the Atlantic Ocean.
Currently.
But clearly, the shoreline was much closer to it. And it's about 1,300 feet above sea level, but it sits on top of a band of cliffs that are at least 1,000 feet high that are much closer. And so a lot of people believe that the continental shelf, used
There was
to be those
tectonic activity.
cliffs. And so then when the flood happened and the waters receded, they actually pulled the shoreline further back west.
Yeah.
And so now it's much further away from the sea.
But that part of the Sahara Desert, it actually is somewhat near the sea.
Oh yeah,
It's incredibly dry. It's a
Mauritania
desert.
is a coastal country.
Right.
And even there's more. There's the Solon recorded the presence of elephants. That Atlantis was famous for elephants. Mauritania still has elephants. There's evidence that there are elephants at that time as well, in terms of skeletons. And,
there's drawings on walls.
and things like that. The rock colors. There's 3 specific rock colors that Solon records. All those colored rocks are
White, black, and red.
White, black, and red present in the area. Again, the exact diameter, the exact number of rings of land and water, the exact surrounding of the Atlas Mountains, the name of the first leader,
The outlet to the south.
the outlet to the south. The timeline fits pretty much.
And their timeline, they're going to try to team it up with an ice age catastrophic event
with the
with like
Younger Dryas.
11,000 to 12,000 years.
Yeah, the Younger Dryas disasters is what they're going to try to.
And what we're going to say in terms of time, just so you know, from a biblical timeline, we're saying 6,000, 6,500 years in a young Earth creationism idea from Adam to the flood. Noah and the flood is about 1,500 years. So that's about 4,500 years in our past. So it's not that crazy. It's even from a biblical timeline, it's about half. They're saying something happened 11,000 years ago. We're saying 45 to 5,000 years ago. And you say it's ice over a long time. We're saying it's rushing water, lots of it over a short time. And that changed even the seacoast. The waters, when they receded, when the waters pulled back, now the ocean actually ended up some miles away, but not that fantastic.
No.
Not that fantastic. And it's bone dry because of changes and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It all adds up. And then one last thing, just for the norming, and I would include myself in this, but I remember when I was doing my first research on Atlantis as, a 10-year-old boy, which was watching Michael J. Fox Atlantis, the Disney movie. Right? Serious research,
Amazing,
very serious. It's actually one of the
Every
best.
man
A lot
only
of
has
Disney
one desire.
is lousy, but that one.
The quest for Atlantis.
Yes,
the lost city of
that
Atlantis.
one's good. Yeah, exactly. So, but I remember watching that and thinking, Atlantis, for a long time, I thought like Atlantis is an underwater city. That's not the legend. The legend is it was a powerful city near the water, a port city that was engulfed.
And it was
in water.
specifically, it was judged by the gods.
And it was quickly.
Yeah, in a day.
In a
It
day.
happened quickly,
So in a
in a
day, like
single
a
day.
flood.
Yep.
So in a day, it's engulfed by water. It wasn't built initially underwater. It's above water, but in a port kind of location, and it's judged, and particularly judged for being it's high technology, incredibly advanced. It's affluent and all these different things, but it's also wicked.
It was judged for the reason that the whole world was judged in the flood, which is that the bloodshed of men knew no bounds.
Yeah, the evil of men had increased to such a degree that God regretted.
But it's
Humanly
not
speaking.
It's not all dry at the current day Ricat structure.
No, it's not. In fact, there's one more detail here.
There's one more detail because Plato said there were 2 springs at the center of Atlantis. There was a bitter spring and there was a sweet spring. Now, there's a lot of bitter springs in the area because there's a lot of salt water beneath the sand. But there's no sweet springs except for at the center of the Ricat structure. Joel,
Unbelievable.
they got primary water, baby.
Primary water.
They got
And
primary water.
if you don't know about primary water, nobody cares.
You dullard.
Nobody
I
cares
care.
because it doesn't sound as exciting. Like if you have a title of an episode, Atlantis, Bigfoot, Nephilim, giants, witches. But primary water is, if you're not primary water maxing, then
What are you doing?
What are you even doing? You're wasting your life.
with you?
Primary water is
You should
the
be
key.
ashamed.
It is the post-millennial great
We're going to
key
garden
hope.
the deserts and maybe Mars.
That's right.
Well, I was going
Maybe
to say,
Mars.
so, I mean, right now, the plan to fix the population issue,
Right.
quote unquote.
The alleged
Yes,
overpopulation.
in Egypt, because the Nile's drying up.
Right.
And they have to help everybody who's going to thirst to death, is to create an inlet from the Mediterranean Sea that goes into, it's far east of the Rakat structure, but into the Sahara Desert. It would be a big lake, like the 5th largest lake in the world by surface area. And then have people go there when it's been, when the ground's been made more fertile by all of the new water. But my question is, why don't we just revive Atlantis
Why don't we drill primary water
and
wells?
say, "Hey,
Right.
Poseidon, you fallen watcher, and Atlas, you demon spirit, like this is just ours now."
Up to date, people have thought, scientists have thought that all we have is one, that water's finite and it's scarce and it's running out. We only have so much and it can never be remade. And then second, not only do we have finite amount of water, but we have old water. And what I mean by that is the hydrological cycle, this idea of, of water evaporating, going up and forming clouds and raining and coming back down, that all of your water is recycled water from, thousands of years old. Even a young earth model, you'd be saying you're drinking 6,000-year-old water. And yeah, you can have your reverse osmosis, filter, which I have, and those things matter. And yes, you can maybe get out some of the chemicals from plastics and human corruption and pollution and those kinds of things. But there's still just rock formations and certain minerals and certain salts that over 6,000 years, if it's only recycled water, a finite amount, and it's the same water there's been since the beginning, and it's flowing over, under the ground and over the ground and over mountains and
Got
through
a bunch
rocks.
of pee in it.
It's picking stuff up, and yes, you do your best to purify it, but the point is the hydrological cycle tells us two things: that there's not enough water, it's finite, but it's also old water. Primary water theory suggests that that number one, water is not finite, but it's actually being made deep underneath the ground through pressures and seismic shifts and all these different things that hydrogen and oxygen are actually, that water is actually being made. It's a renewable resource. And then two, so it's not finite because we're actually gaining more water every day. Number two, we don't just have more water than we think, but we have new water. Instead of water that's 6,000 years old, you have new water that was made just last year. And if there would be a way, as technology increased, to drill down, we're not just saying a few hundred feet, you're going to have to really get down there. But if you could drill down and be able to actually mine primary water straight up, not only is it a massive amount, undersurface oceans, we're not talking about puddles, oceans, just far down, you could eradicate deserts. At least conceptually, every place in the world could be rainforest, basically. And as it pertains to human beings, this is just one other application, but it could be the secret without medicine that has been corrupt. Not all medicine, but lots of medicine, it's just a trade. It's like, hey, we'll fix we'll fix this, your cancer problem, but we'll give you this other disease. Instead of medicine that maybe heals your sickness there, but creates another problem there, it'll fix your heart, but ruin your liver. This would be, what if the trick to lengthening human lifespans, like Isaiah 65, this is before the final return of Christ, because people are still dying, but it says the youth will die at 100. Meaning that 100 would be, that dude was young. And what if the way to elongate lifespans is not by some of the corrupt medicine that we do today, but actual natural solutions that God baked into the pie, the world that he made? We just haven't reached it yet. And what if the drop-off in lifespans that you see in the biblical narrative, they get shorter and shorter and shorter, is because the water is getting older and older and older? But if we could get new water,
I want to call
below
this
the surface,
the Joel Webbin Fountain of Youth theory.
it's the fountain
Number
of youth,
one.
not in a specific locale, but it's actually worldwide.
And the other thing,
You just
that I
have to
was
be able
gonna
to
say,
access
Fountain
it.
of Coof.
I just want-
Like,
I just want somebody to look at me the way Joel Webbon looks at primary water.
You know that I do.
Nothing gets Joel Webbon more amped than
primary water is exciting.
Because we did a whole episode for about an hour and a half on primary water, and I get the sense right now Joel's ready to do round 2.
But that's it. That was round 2. I'm done. That's all I'll say. Go check out the other episode.
Well, no, it is compelling though that you had this.
It's wild. It's so wild.
Antediluvian city that's just at this point it's just confirmed. I have literally
Atlantis
zero doubt.
Is
in
the
my
Rikat
mind.
structure?
That is Atlantis.
Yes, and it was a pre-flood society ruled by a Nephilim, and they had maybe a primary water spring at the center,
right?
And they all lived for a very long time,
right?
So I don't know.
That's it.
There really could be something to
When
it.
you say I don't know,
You do know.
Well,
you do know.
I say I don't know in the sense of like, so of course I know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What we're saying
you do.
is
It's
we
like
know.
when someone says, yeah, no, it means no.
Yeah, no,
But when
we
someone
do
says,
believe.
no, yeah, it means
No,
yeah.
It means yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a yes.
That's right. Bro, we're so back. We've never been more so back right now because we just figured out where Atlantis is, the secret to lengthening lifespans, and
beautifying the earth.
And also a kingdom that's going to be reclaimed by Christendom.
And it's going to be named
with its
New
former
Numenor.
glory, but better and holy.
Yes.
And honoring
Numenor,
Jesus.
Numenor is not going to fall. It's
New Numenor.
It's not going to be a Calabash.
It's like New York. New Numenor.
Numenor.
Yeah, except like.
And we're understanding, in all this, we were able to understand Atlantis, primary water, a little bit of hollow earth theory, the rebeautification of the world, getting lifespans lengthened again with a fulfillment of Isaiah 65, understanding Nephilim, understanding giants, and we arrived at a perfect biblical understanding of mermaids.
Now, and can I add one more thing too? I was just going to say.
You guys didn't even appreciate the joke. I said, and we got mermaids.
Did. We figured mermaids out, allegedly.
I was busy thinking about what I was going to say instead of listening. So, I'm sorry.
I want to also just say and posit that Atlantis is not the only such city.
Dude.
In the ancient world.
Yes.
Were you about to say the same thing?
I was literally about to say the same thing.
Well, it's because we are the same person.
Right.
So
you're wearing the same jacket, same shirt. It's
same
honestly
pants.
a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. There are
and a lot of
I
people
feel
think,
like I should sit in between you. Just
a lot of
have the
people
same
think
amount of
that we're-
riz.
Yeah, a lot of people think that we're brothers too.
Yeah,
there you
which
go.
we are in Christ.
But we're not.
But I do think if you look at the record, you can go all around the world and you're going to find, especially antediluvian, in my view,
before the flood,
as well as you'll find other echoes throughout history after that. But this isn't a tale that would just happened there in the Sahara,
right,
in Atlantis. This happened in cities and empires all around the world. In fact, it's one of the reasons that I so appreciate N.D. Wilson's Ashtown Burials series, which is a fictional story, but it includes many of these cast of characters. In his story, he calls them transmortals, but he brings in many of these ancient figures like Nimrod, Gilgamesh,
my guy.
He brings these in. And tells the story of everything from the Aztecs to the the ancient Atlanteans and beyond, that many places in history, just like we talked about in our Patreon exclusive, the ayahuasca psychedelics episode.
Join Patreon.
Go check that out.
Our Patreon, and you'll be able to see a whole thing on DMT.
And what we're seeing there is that human beings in this time period, and it still happens in many senses, but they were communing with ancient evil powers, spiritual powers, and they were doing real things on earth with that power in ruling and enslaving worlds and empires, but they were fallen and wicked empires.
Right.
Like the empire of Babylon and Assyria and Egypt.
Right.
These are not good men. These are wicked men. And we see partly not just the sin of, it's not just the flesh, it's also the devil.
Yes,
and his
morally
minions.
depraved in terms of human nature having fallen, but also demonic influence, morally depraved, on the moral level, depraved. But in terms of innovation, technology, advancement, sophistication, these things, it's not just like, oh, wow. Because sometimes you say it in a way that's it's patronizing when you're speaking of the ancients and those who came before. It's like, look at them. These people figured out the wheel. Wow.
Aqueducts.
Wow. They were very developed.
Oh, you made a bow and arrow.
But when we say when we say developed, and this is what I think, like somebody like Graham, what's his last name?
Hancock in ancient, or
I think he gets
Ancient
this
Apocalypse.
right.
Oh,
Now, he cannot help but be just enough wrong to ensure that he can keep rejecting the Bible.
He hates Christianity.
Because he hates Christianity. He needs Jesus. But in every, so he'll be so consistent, and then he forces himself to be inconsistent to deny Christ.
Yeah, he doesn't stick the
But
landing.
other than that, in every other instance, he's right. And one of the things that, he's been scorned and mocked about is that he believes that previous civilization, he's not just saying, oh, there were people a long time ago. What makes him unique, right? Because everybody says that. What makes him unique is he's saying two main things, as I understand it, that there were people a long time ago, and that some of these people, ancient, even further
ancient.
back. So there were people hundreds of years back who actually were primitive, but then there were people thousands of years back, and they actually get, as you go further back, they get more sophisticated.
In his view, this is like 20,000 years.
Yes, and in our view, we would be saying what he says is more primitive in the more recent past. We would put that at 2,000 years, 3,000 years, and then what he says is very sophisticated at 20,000 years. We would put that more at like 5,000 years before the flood, and we'd say because of fallen angels giving knowledge and giving that they were highly sophisticated, incredible technology. So these civilizations, like Atlantis, like and even after the flood, like Babel, and these kind of
and Yanaguni,
Tronis.
Yeah,
incredibly sophisticated, but lasting before the flood. Not just sophisticated, but also people think we have 8 billion people, give or take, right now on the planet. There are some guys who have put, and I think this is absolutely plausible, guys who have put the total world population at the time of the flood at 11 billion.
Wow.
When you think, and I'm not saying it has to be that, but when you think of elongated lifespans, when you think Adam lived over 900 years, how many, he had Cain, he had Abel, he had Seth, and the Bible says, and then, Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. Now, you think, oh, yeah, maybe they had another 2 or 3 kids, or 200 or 300 with that kind of lifespan, that kind of fertility.
Can you imagine remembering birthdays?
Right. And that's just one generation. And then all of them, how many kids do they have? And they're all living this long. Nobody's dying, or very few are dying. And so it's absolutely possible that you have billions, maybe not that exact, 11, but you could have hundreds of millions, maybe a couple billion on the planet at that time, but then also influenced and taught and tutelaged by fallen angels with their knowledge. You have Atlantis could have been incredible.
All right, guys, listen, huge development with our conference. This is the Christ is King Conference, How to Defeat Trash World, happening the year of our Lord, 2025, April 3rd, 4th, and 5th. That's a Thursday through Saturday. Now, we already had an all-star lineup, but we've made it even sweeter. We've got Steve Dace, Orrin McIntyre, Andrew Isker. We've added his co-host from Contramundum, that's CJ Engel. We've got all the Ogden boys, Brian Sauvé, Eric Kahn, Ben Garrett, and Dan Burkholder. Of course, we've got the Christian Prince himself, Dusty Devers, the reasonable Latino, A.D. Robles, and John Harris, the host of Conversations That Matter. But we've also carved out now space for a formal 90-minute debate hosted between Stephen Wolfe and David Reece. The debate is on natural law versus theonomy. And then we've added one more special guest speaker to the lineup, Calvin Robinson. We are super excited about this conference. 8 main sessions, 3 different panels, plus the debate. It's going to be an incredible time that we spend together. Again, this is April 3rd through 5th, 2025, and you can go to rightresponseconference.com to register today. Again, that's rightresponseconference.com to register today. Now, some of you already know this, but I happen to be a huge sucker when it comes to Christmas. In the Webben household, we don't have just one, but 2 appeals to heaven. Yes, I'm talking about 2 Christmas trees in my living room. I love Christmas, always have, always will. And this time of year, because of that, I'm feeling particularly generous. So this is what we're offering. We are going to go back all the way to the early bird pricing. The cheapest, lowest amount for this conference we've ever offered. We're matching that price for anybody who registers now. Go to rightresponseconference.com, and in the promo code, just write Christmas, all caps, Christmas. Promo code is Christmas. Go to rightresponseconference.com and get the lowest price we've ever offered for the conference, but you got to do it by the end of December 31st. Are you a Christian struggling to find companies that align with your values and beliefs? Well, then Squirrelly Joe's has you covered for all your coffee needs. All of their coffee is hand-selected and roasted fresh every day by a family of fellow believers. Try them out and you'll savor exceptional coffee while knowing that your investment supports a company committed to following God's teachings and upholding truth and righteousness, ensuring that your hard-earned money contributes to the growth of God's kingdom. Stop giving your hard-earned dollars to pagans who support evil. Right Response listeners have access to an exclusive deal. Your first bag of coffee is free. All you have to do is cover the shipping. So head on over to squirrellyjoes.com/right response. Again, that's squirrellyjoes.com/right response to claim your first free bag of coffee today.
Even if you take away the fallen angels, you have Adam, who wasn't always fallen.
Right.
He actually experienced righteousness
Right.
and holiness in a state
at
of
least
innocence
48
before
hours.
God. Well, according to Dante, what is it, like 7 minutes or something?
Some guys say he fell on the 8th day.
Yeah, but Milton gave them quite a while. But anyway, the point is, he was probably quite intelligent. He probably understood nature very, very well. And so even if you take away the fallen angel aspect of it, I think that even the line of Seth was probably highly advanced. I think that Noah, in his capability of building that ark, of course he was helped along by God, but also he built the ark, which is an astonishing feat given that time. So I think the conclusion that pre-flood, right before the flood, human society was very large and was very advanced is unavoidable. And then after that, we no longer see quite that skyrocket of advancement because we don't have any covenant head that was innocent at one time.
Right.
And we have all of that technology lost. They're having to restart all over again. And then you also have the demons now that are being much more prohibitive. Like they're wanting to kill. They're wanting to kill and take away the image of God. They're not as much wanting to share gifts that will cause flourishing, at least not for as long a time, I think.
Right.
That's very speculative. But to me, it seems like an almost unavoidable conclusion, at least in terms of Anti-diluvian society being very advanced right before the flood comes.
Right. But you do still have some societies post-flood, like Babel, that are still advanced, technologically advanced. So it's not that it all happens before the flood. But what happened before the flood, I think, is if we could see the world before the flood, you'd be seeing giants, dragons. As far as we know,
The pyramids
there could have been electricity.
Technologically advanced civilization on some level.
Incredible. And
Egyptians watching like light shows on the
large
pyramids.
cities. Yeah. Insane.
And with the possibility of technologies that are capable of moving 200-ton blocks, hundreds of miles up thousands of feet. These are the kinds of things that we can guess, but we can't really fathom.
Right. Giants answers part of that question. Like, what if they were just big people in terms of megaliths? But also, I don't think it was just big people. No. And I don't think it was less than that.
No,
I'm a giant fan.
I think it was insane.
And I think some of these giants were 30, as you'll have to watch a giant episode and we'll account for why we think this. But I think some of these giants were 30, 40, 50, even 60 feet tall. But it's also, it's the technology. We think they were incredibly advanced to be able to
I saw
build
this
some of
thing,
these things.
this insane video one time. And I can't remember the name of the pyramid, but it's one of the lesser pyramids in Egypt that's far away from the Great Pyramid, more into the desert. And this is somewhat recent, like in the last couple decades. They found a tunnel that went down underneath it, and they got in there, and they found this massive room. It was a great room with pillars holding it up that was just lined all the way with granite bowls. Like big bowls. The name escapes me of what like a big bowl is.
Basin,
I guess, but
based
one of those tall ones,
bowls.
They're like, now you'd turn it on a like a potter's wheel and you'd shoot it up or whatever. Anyway, these are made of granite.
Pit. Go ahead.
But so that's already impressive that they have these type of bowls made of granite. But then also they measured how flat the tops were, the top rim. Which, there's about a 3-inch wide rim on the top. Okay. And it was perfectly flat in reference to itself within like 0.02 microns. We can't do that today. And this isn't just one of them.
And when you say we can't do it today, you're not just talking about by hand. You mean with machines.
We don't have the precision. We can't guarantee a tolerance within 0.02 microns. We can't do that.
Wow.
Maybe if you have the highest quality CNC machine in the world, but it's really hard to do with granite because of its crystalline structure. It's not as predictable. So these
Ben
people,
used to be an engineer.
Yeah, I did. I was an engineer by trade. These people had.
So he can say those things. If you hear me saying it, you can just say BS. But if Ben's
It
saying
means
it,
one of us saw it on Twitter. If we say it. Yeah.
But these people had an unbelievable ability to machine stone in a way that not only rivals, but usually exceeds our capability of machining aluminum today.
wow.
That's astonishing. That's almost more impressive to me than the pyramid that they were underneath.
That sounds like a fallen angel father
That's what I'm saying.
told you how to do something.
Like some kind of great skill set that was passed along with a technology that we can't imagine.
Right. The fallen angel father. But also, you are right, because I don't want to discount your other, like, think 900 years to perfect your craft.
Right.
You're Adam.
Right.
And you knew the world before it was fallen.
Right.
I mean, that, like, Adam, people think of Adam as like a great grandpa who's walking around. Like, Adam was a king.
Yeah.
Adam, I mean, he would have, everybody comes from him. So he's related to everybody. So he's got great grandchildren. But it's not just like, hey, great grandpa. It's King Adam. They bow if they get to see Adam. Like,
So cool.
Because he's walked with God. It's amazing to think of that antediluvian world with giants and dragons and maybe mermaids.
It's so different that
Probably mermaids, but honestly, let's be honest, they're fairies, and you'll have to watch the fairy episode.
Mermaids in some way.
Yeah.
I think mermaids would be in the category of Bigfoot,
Yeah.
like a fairy type thing,
That's where I would lean. I think that mermaids are real.
which is a particular kind of demon, an elemental spirit kind of.
I'm calling them elementangles or elementangels.
You're just gonna.
What was your elemental?
Calling them elemental angels, like in a class of
Elemental
angelic
angels.
being that is focused on the operations of nature.
Right.
Boom.
Would have been a class.
Right.
A
So they're kind of
classical
preternatural.
idea.
They have 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the scene realm. It's
Which episode did we hit that on? Two, I
can't-
think. Our angels episode, but then also our fairies.
fairies? We hit it
episode.
real hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
and
gonna
then we
even
dabbled in the Bigfoot episode.
We cruised.
I think it's
on that
worth
one.
noting that in first, I think it's First Peter. Peter, like the antediluvian world is so different. Peter calls it the world that then was.
Yeah.
It was because the flood was not just a catastrophe. The flood was a decreation event followed by a recreation event.
Right.
It is such a catastrophic event.
It was
that
a
it was
new
a
world.
different world that existed at that time.
Right.
Wow.
Right. A baptism of the world.
All right. Well, this is what you need to do. One, you can become a Patreon, check out, 2 or 3 extra bonus episodes that we've recorded. 2, you need to go over to Haunted Cosmos, subscribe, click the bell, and check out their content. And 3, every single quarter, right? So this is Q2 of 2024, the year of our Lord. But every quarter, on Fridays at 4 p.m. Central Time, we have on both YouTube and Twitter and all our platforms, the Friday special. And so for Q2, we're doing Brian and Ben, Haunted Cosmos, 10 episodes. Q3, we're going to have other notable guests that I fly in, and it's going to be interesting conversations. Can I promise that it'll be Atlantis interesting?
I don't know.
can't.
It's tough to beat that.
I can't. I mean, that's just tough to beat.
It's the
but
best
whatever it
topic
is,
ever.
It's
whatever
kinda
it is,
cheating.
it'll be great.
It's kind of cheating that Haunted Cosmos, like when this comes out, April,
It'll be April through June.
right around. So we're going to be dropping season 3 of Haunted
Yeah.
Cosmos, which are 10 episode seasons. And we're opening with things like Missing 411, Fairies,
Ocean Mysteries.
Ocean Mysteries 2.0.
We're actually, I'm going to say it right now. We're doing a whole episode in season 3 on different Atlantis type myths.
That's right.
From around the world to see just how common of
Yeah.
a trope this really
Yeah.
is.
Right.
And potentially how widespread this same situation was.
So it's kind of cheating for other topics to try and be as interesting. We don't even have to be that interesting, me and Ben, because we're talking about Atlantis.
It's the greatest topic of all.
Like
it really
the
is.
thing, and the
Every
Bermuda
boy's
Triangle,
dream.
like things every young 8-year-old boy is watching those shows on Discovery Channel or the Travel Channel, and they're like, the Bermuda Triangle is going to be a big problem in my life. I can
Really
they're
need to
like,
solve
or they're
this.
like, no one's found Atlantis yet.
I
I'm
will
going
find
to
it.
I'm going to be
I'm
the one
going
to
to
find
find
it.
Atlantis.
That's right.
And
That's
I
right.
did.
We did.
And I found it.
Dream come true.
I didn't take it from another YouTuber.
The royal
I found
you
it.
that includes me.
You did take it.
You actually found the
So
video.
the point is, subscribe to our channel, hit the bell with the right response. Also go over to Haunted Cosmos, subscribe, hit the bell, follow us, follow them. And if you loved the collab, if you liked it, then the solution to that problem is that, Q3, I'm going to have somebody else. Q4, probably have somebody else. But Q5,
Hey.
Q6,
Yeah.
we'll have them back.
Share
We'll
it with
do
all your
again.
friends so that Joel invites us back.
Is there
Yeah,
a
there you go.
6-quartered year?
No,
Doesn't
you're
even
right.
matter.
You're right.
I know what
but
you're saying,
you get the point. You
The
get
royal
the point.
quarter.
Q1 2025.
Well, Q would also be Quinn, not just
Quinn.
court.
Yeah,
So there is a Q5 actually.
All right.
That's why I abbreviated it.
Yeah. That's what we're saying.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. God bless. We hope it's been helpful and enjoyable. The world is not just stuff. We live in God's magical world.
So true.
And it matters.